Let's talk about doulas. What is a doula? Why would you want one? And how do you get one, right? So, a doula is a professional labor support person that you can take with you to the hospital to ensure that you have continuous labor support throughout your entire birthing experience. Now, the reason this is something I highly encourage you to consider is because when you come into the hospital, there are a few things you're not exactly sure about, so you don't know what kind of labor support is available to you there. Number one, does the hospital you deliver at require your labor and delivery nurses to take care of more than one patient at a time? And if so, how will she provide you with labor support, right? That's continuous. Also, labor and delivery nurses are required to do a lot of charting and a lot of other tasks outside of labor support. And so, for them to spend a lot of time actually providing you with labor support can sometimes be tricky. Number two, as far as training goes, most labor and delivery nurses are trained the basics of labor support. And that basic of labor support usually comes during their preceptorship or when they're training how to become a labor and delivery nurse, right? They've done all their schooling, they've learned all the medical facts and stuff from the books. Then they come into the hospital and they have an experienced nurse training them. That experienced nurse imparts all of her wisdom and experience into this new nurse, and she learns how to support people just like her preceptor did. Now, for a labor and delivery nurse to get extensive training in labor support, like to understand evidence-based labor support, spinning babies, pelvic dynamics, dysfunctional labor maneuvers, these are all different kinds of trainings that a labor and delivery nurse can go get. But she has to have a couple things. First, she has to have time off from her job to be able to go to those trainings, which are usually at least a couple of days in length, if not a whole week. And then hopefully her job is also paying her for those hours so she doesn't have to miss out on income while she's learning how to do her job better, right? And so some labor and delivery nurses have been able to go to that training, get that training, and bring that back to their unit. Now, every unit has nurses who are really eager to do that, and they come back and they share what information they can with their coworkers, which is excellent. So then, if that's the situation in your hospital, it's just a matter of, will your nurse have time to be your labor and delivery support person? That's one of the reasons I highly encourage you to have your partner with you and at least one other support person who can be there actually providing you continuous support, not somebody that you feel like you have to entertain or that you have to hurry up for, that's going to sit in the corner and be an observer. Somebody who's going to be actively involved in the support that you need is vital. And so hiring a doula is something a lot of people choose. One of the number one reasons I hear people say I'm not choosing to get a doula is because they're afraid that that doula would take the place of their partner. And that's absolutely not the case. If you are working with a doula, her number one job is actually to support you guys in whatever way you want to be supported. But I know when I'm working as a doula with couples, I'm almost always supporting the partner in supporting the pregnant person, whoever's giving birth, like, because she wants that person to be her main person, right? Unless she's really irritated with him. And then I would step in. But generally speaking, it's the partner that she wants, but the partners generally don't know or feel confident in what it is they're doing to support their person. And so I get to help them help them. And then it's not uncommon for him to be massaging her and giving, like hip squeezes for hours. And I'm, putting my elbow in his shoulders because he's starting to cramp up. There's different ways that doulas can support you. And one of the awesome things about doulas, when you interview them, I highly recommend that you interview a few in your area, or if you're doing virtual, interview a few virtual ones before you hire them. You want to really make sure you click, because you want to know that the way that they communicate, the way that you receive, the way you communicate, the way that they receive, that it's going to work really well together so that you guys are a good team. You don't want to find somebody that you clash against or somebody that's super negative. You want to have somebody who's really, positive and helps you advocate for yourself and is really open to your values and what you want in this birth. Because if you have a doula who's pushing their own agenda or their own trauma or their own ideas of what's right, that's not the support you need. You need to have support the way you want it, right? And so a good doula is going to come in and support you where you're at and with what you want. How do you find a doula? I recommend if you can get a doula in person, that's ideal. Looking at in some of your mom's groups, like that are local moms groups on Facebook, or maybe some groups that meet at the library or something like that. Find out who's recommended, talk to lots of moms in your area, call midwives, ask them if there are any doulas they recommend, check with some of the childbirth educators in your area. That's the number one way I recommend. And also don't hesitate to look for doulas that are maybe in training or even some foundations that support providing you with a doula, because there are a lot of foundations now that are seeking the opportunity to provide doula services to underserved populations. And so dig. I will put resources in the resources about doulas so that you can have a few places where you can start. But yes, it's absolutely worth digging for. And don't automatically dismiss it if you have a tight financial situation, because there are some organizations out there that do it. And there are some doulas that do some pro bono work. And so see what you can't find out there. And if you happen to be some kind of small business person, I know when I was getting started in my business in North Carolina many years ago, we did a lot of bartering. So like I have one friend now, I mean, we've known each other for years now, but I was her doula. I was her childbirth educator and was there for her birth and everything. And she was my massage therapist. So that worked out great. And then I've had other people, I was their doula and they did house cleaning. So I was like, okay, I've never had a house cleaner before, but you know what, I'm starting my business and I don't know what to do. And so we agreed on a certain amount of sessions where she could come and clean my house. And I was her doula and I was there for her birth. And, so there are options. Okay. It's not just I'm broke, I don't have a choice. That's definitely not the case. Next, I would recommend that you understand different things that doula can do for supporting you during the process. During your contract, you'll likely have some prenatal visits. When I was a doula in North Carolina, I wouldn't be a doula to anybody unless they had taken my childbirth classes, because I was new to that birth world there. I was a labor and delivery nurse, but I was new to that birth world. And so I wanted to know what people knew when I was coming to support them. And so they had to take my childbirth class and then they got a discount off the doula services. So we'd already established that kind of relationship, but then we would do a prenatal meeting where we would cover their birth plan. We would talk about anything that's super concerning to them. We would talk about different things that are important as far as not in labor. How do they cope with pain? What do they do when they're stressed? Like understanding the ways that they naturally cope with stress and pain, not being in labor, so that we could practice and learn things to help them cope with pain during the labor process. And then you'll decide with your doula what's the best plan. Like, will she come to your home once labor starts? Will she be supporting you on phone and text until you get to the hospital? There are various different ways. And then when you get to the hospital, if you have an in-person doula, they'll generally come with you once you're in active labor. They will not go, generally speaking, to the hospital with you when you're getting set up for an induction. And the reason why is you're not in labor yet. You don't really need their support yet. They'll be available to you by text or phone or whatever. But once labor kicks in, then they would come to the hospital. Sometimes it can take a while, 24, 36 hours to even get you into labor. So that would be a really long shift for her, right? You want her to be rested, fed, all that good stuff when you are in the hot and heavy of labor. Many people who get a doula still choose to have an epidural, like that's their original plan, and there's nothing wrong with that. You still need to have somebody who's supporting you and who's helping you to rotate and shift positions and kind of like understand different interventions that are happening, different recommendations that might be going on. So they can help you understand things. When the doctor or midwife comes in to talk to you about different interventions, they can help you ask questions so you feel like you have been truly informed. So you can either give your true informed consent or your true informed refusal. They will not make decisions for you. They cannot do that. It has to be your decision, you and your partner, but they can help you ask questions, okay? And they can speak up if there is a concern, like if a provider goes to clamp the cord and you have requested in your birth plan and multiple times that you want delayed cord clamping and baby's crying, if the provider goes to clamp the cord right away, they can speak up and say, oh, Dr. Smith, no, stop. They want the delayed cord clamping. So they can speak up like that. But really make sure you have those conversations with you, your partner, and the doula so that everybody knows what their role is in the labor and birth process, who will be speaking up at this point, who is going to be, keeping track of things. When I'm a doula for people, I keep track of, Pitocin was started at this time or started pushing at this time. Like I try to keep track of the time of different things because birth is such a crazy thing. Like our perception of time and even the order of how things happened is really shifted and skewed, especially if we're dealing with some sleep deprivation. And so keeping those notes is really important. I even did that with my daughters when they gave birth, because it just is weird like that. And it's hard to remember how things happened in the order of things. So this doula that you'll have will be your continuous labor support, where you have a labor and delivery nurse who's going to change shifts every 12 to 8 hours. Your doula will be continuous with you. Now, if you have a really drawn out labor, active labor, then your doula may need to have somebody come in and substitute for them for a period of time. But if this is the situation, you will have already likely met that substitute, a doula, and established a relationship with them and feel comfortable with them. Other times, if you do have an epidural and you're okay with periods of time without that active support, then she may rest there in the room if you're dealing with a really long drawn out. And I mean, I've had situations where I've gone out to my car and taken a nap and then come back in, like after she got an epidural and was all happy and she was sleeping and dad was sleeping. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go take a nap as well. And then we all regrouped and everything was great. But studies show having that continuous labor support decreases your chances of having a cesarean delivery, decreases your chances for other interventions, and also it improves your experience of birth. It gives you a more positive birth experience. So my encouragement is check your local mom pages. See if you can't find a local doula near you. If you're not happy or you don't feel like you click with any, then start looking into virtual doula support, okay?